Good morning. How are you today? Well, it's very nice here. Great Friday. Tomorrow, Saturday, we get to find out what kind of demonstrations there may be. I, for one, question why in the world anybody gave these guys a permit. But if you're going to give them a permit, why would you give it to them right there on the Capitol? You want to give them access to the place that they tried to take over the last time? Are they going to be the same people? No, yes, it's not clear. Nobody knows. Will there be a counter demonstration? Yes, no, don't know. It'll be one of the things I think John and I will discuss in our podcast this Sunday. Whether it was a fizzle, whether they got thousands of people, hundreds of people, or dozens of people, what violence there was, what statements were made, whether political figures appeared or not. In the category of the dead hand of former Attorney General Barr, the mouthpiece for Trump, he had appointed a special prosecutor, and he hoped that what he would find was that the investigation by Mueller was somehow tampered with, shouldn't be credited. And so they went off and they appointed this guy Durham to investigate that, and he's found nothing. And in fact, he had one member of his staff quit because she thought it was politically motivated. And now they've indicted a guy by the name of Sussman, who is, besides being a lawyer and prominent, invisibly so to most people in D.C. who are not in the profession, he's somewhat of an expert on cybersecurity. And he brought to the FBI information that he thought, based on what he knew, indicated that there might be communications between a Russian bank and a bank involving Trump. And the critical question was, did he accurately represent himself as representing the Clinton campaign? Because his law firm did, and apparently he charged time for that. That is the false statement that they're prosecuting him for, that he misled them as to who he represented. Now, he was bringing this to the FBI, and the FBI knew that he was associated with the campaign. But the fact that he denied that he was representing any client, they think, is a false statement. Now, false statements have to be material, which translates into, it's got to be really important at the time. So who he represented wasn't that important. And when the cyber experts at the FBI looked into it, they thought it was too distant a connection to really be a connection. And it sounded pretty credible. So he's being indicted because that was Durham's charge, to get somebody for Trump and for Barr to show that there was bad goings on. Well, it's certainly unconvincing, but I've had people ask me since this happened, or first that it was going to happen, and then since it has happened, on the last day he could possibly be prosecuted, given the 5-year statute of limitations. And they said, why is it they would prosecute this guy on this BS offense? And there's all this other stuff going and nobody's prosecuting. Well, no man is above the law. And as a footnote, you got to ask yourself, why is Garland allowing this guy continue to be a special prosecutor to run down the department as requested by Barr and Trump? Hard to say. Garland continues to be a disappointment, even when he sort of staggers forth and does something right. He was such a bad choice. And I don't know, well, I know who I would appoint, all sorts of people I could think of. Anyone who would actually fight would be a good start. Now, the United States has a way of sticking its thumb in our allies' eyes. You know, what am I talking about? France has negotiated a $66 billion deal with Australia to supply submarines. Okay. And now, we apparently, that is the United States, are going to give the supply them to Australia. And we're going to do this in conjunction with the British. And the French have cried foul, sort of like you're interfering with our contract. Why are you taking this away from us? And of course, China is annoyed that we're doing it because they see our influence in the area as antagonistic to them. People have rightly compared this to what Trump might do. And yes, I think it is. If we can't respect our allies, what are we stepping on their business for? So there's that. Government as usual. In the case of the Supreme Court, and nobody has protested outside Justice Thomas's house. They could, I suppose. And he gave one of these speeches to Notre Dame in the last several days. And what he said was, you guys, you think that our preferences and our politics, that's what changes our decisions, and it's not so. It doesn't even pass the laugh test. He's talking about this within days of having refused a stay of the crazy Texas law that says if there's a heartbeat for the fecundated ovum inside the woman, she can't have an abortion, which defies Roe v. Wade. And he says we shouldn't draw conclusions from that they're being political. Well, certainly we can, because the law dictates otherwise, practice dictates otherwise, and that's what they're doing. These guys are always the victim, even as they're doing things that make us the victim, we the people, defying the Constitution and the law, defying common sense, doing exactly what we thought they would do when they got on the court, and they're doing it. I think for a wrap-up, let's talk about the Hill. On the Hill we have the team of S&M, I call them, Sinema and Manchin. And so we've heard a lot about Manchin recently, and I put up a funny picture of Manchin as kind of an insurrectionist himself, with the headgear and all that stuff. But Sinema sort of hides behind the scenes, and she always has a funny way of appearing at these press conferences. She always seems to be leaning into somebody, and I don't know what that is, but there it is. She thinks that the infrastructure bill, it's a little too expensive. So here we go again. The other Democrat, besides Manchin, this one from Arizona, she's putting a stick in the spoke of the wheel of progress, just like Manchin's trying to do, by saying, we need an infrastructure bill, but it's too big. And I think the real reason has to do more with the taxes that are part of that bill than the size of the bill itself. So that's kind of my rundown for the day. The things that our government is doing, don't they seem amateur somehow? Like one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So what we need is more forceful clarity, that we should be reckoning those people who've committed unlawful acts, and we should be dealing with the problems at hand, and we're not really. So that's kind of sad. Anyhow, it's beautiful out today. I hope it is where you are. Get out and walk, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow, probably before the demonstrations on the Hill, and we'll be commenting on them Sunday and, of course, on our podcast. All the best. Bye-bye.